The massive warship of the Galactic Empire hung in space like a predator waiting to strike. Admiral Korthax stood on the command deck, his four arms crossed behind his back. His purple scales shimmered under the bright lights of the bridge. He looked at the small blue planet below with disgust. "Such a primitive world," he said to his second-in-command. "They barely have faster-than-light travel. This will be over in minutes." Commander Vex nodded, his tentacles writhing with anticipation. "The humans have ignored our warnings for too long, Admiral. They continue to expand into our territory." "Fire the plasma cannons," Korthax ordered. "Target their major cities first. We'll teach these insects what happens when they defy the Empire." The warship's weapons charged with a low hum that grew louder and louder. Bright orange energy gathered at the tips of the cannons. Then, with a sound like thunder, the weapons fired. Streams of plasma shot toward Earth, cutting through the atmosphere like hot knives through butter. On Earth, people in New York looked up as the sky turned orange. Children playing in parks stopped and pointed at the strange lights. Office workers pressed their faces against windows, wondering what was happening. Then the plasma hit. Buildings melted like ice cream in the sun. Streets turned to rivers of molten concrete. Millions of people vanished in seconds. Their bodies turned to ash before they could even scream. The Statue of Liberty melted into a puddle of copper and iron. The Empire's attack moved from city to city. London, Tokyo, Moscow, Sydney, all fell under the devastating assault. In an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Chen watched the destruction on multiple screens. Her hands gripped the edge of the command table so hard her knuckles turned white. Around her, military personnel worked frantically at their stations. "Casualty reports coming in, General," Lieutenant Martinez said, his voice shaking. We've lost over 2 billion people in the first hour." Sarah's jaw tightened. She had trained for many scenarios, but nothing like this. An alien empire attacking Earth without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. She turned to her communications officer. "Get me Captain Jake Morrison. Now." "Yes, General. Patching you through to the Defiance." On the human warship Defiance, hidden behind the moon, Captain Jake Morrison floated in zero gravity as alarms blared around him. His crew of 500 worked at their stations with grim determination. They had been on a routine patrol when the attack began. Now they were humanity's only warship in position to respond. "Captain, General Chen on the line," his communications officer announced. Jake pushed himself to the command chair and strapped in. The general's face appeared on the main screen. Even through the static-filled connection, he could see the fury in her eyes. "Captain Morrison, you are hereby authorized to engage the enemy with extreme prejudice. Make them pay for what they've done." "Understood, General. We won't let you down." The connection ended, and Jake turned to his crew. These men and women had trained together for years. They were more than fellow soldiers. They were family. And family had just been murdered by the billions. "All hands. This is the captain," Jake announced over the ship's intercom. "The Galactic Empire has attacked our home. They've killed billions of our people, our families, our friends, our children." His voice grew harder with each word. "Today, we show them why that was the biggest mistake they'll ever make. Battle stations." The crew moved with deadly efficiency. Weapons officers charged the railguns and loaded the nuclear missiles. Engineers pushed the fusion reactors to maximum output. Pilots ran to their fighter craft, ready to launch at a moment's notice. "Sir, the enemy ship is massive," Lieutenant Commander Wong reported from the tactical station. "It's 50 times our size, with shields and weapons we've never seen before." "I don't care if it's the size of a moon," Jake replied. "We're going to hurt them. We're going to make them remember this day forever." Back on the Empire warship, Admiral Korthax watched the destruction of Earth with satisfaction. The planet's surface was scarred with massive craters where cities once stood. Smoke and ash filled the atmosphere. The few human military installations that tried to fight back were swatted aside like annoying insects. "Admiral, we're detecting a human vessel approaching from behind their moon," a sensor operator reported. Korthax laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "One ship? How amusing. Let them come. We'll add them to the debris field." The Defiance accelerated hard, its engines burning bright blue against the darkness of space. Inside, Jake felt the G-forces pressing him into his chair despite the inertial dampeners. His ship was smaller, weaker, and outgunned in every way, but it had something the Empire's warship didn't: the fury of a species fighting for survival. "Target their shield generators," Jake ordered. "Fire everything we have." The Defiance's weapons opened up in a coordinated assault. Railgun rounds, traveling at significant fractions of light speed, slammed into the Empire ship's shields. Nuclear missiles followed, detonating in brilliant flashes that would have blinded anyone looking directly at them. Fighter craft swarmed out of the Defiance's hangar bays, adding their smaller weapons to the assault. On the Empire ship, alarms began to sound. The shields held, but the constant bombardment was draining their power reserves faster than expected. "Return fire!" Korthax commanded. "Destroy that annoying gnat!" The Empire's weapons swiveled toward the Defiance. Plasma beams lanced out, forcing Jake to throw his ship into evasive maneuvers. The human ship danced through space, barely avoiding destruction with each near miss. "Sir, we're not even scratching their shields," Wong shouted over the chaos. "Then we get creative," Jake replied. He activated the ship-wide intercom. "Engineering, I need you to overload Fusion Reactor 3. Set it to detonate on my command." "Captain, that'll take out half our power," the chief engineer protested. "Do it!" As the Defiance continued its seemingly futile attack, engineers worked frantically to turn one of their power sources into a bomb. The reactor's magnetic containment was carefully adjusted, building up pressure like a cosmic pressure cooker. Jake piloted his ship closer and closer to the Empire vessel, dodging weapons fire with moves that pushed both the ship and crew to their limits. Several plasma beams grazed the hull, leaving long scars in the armor. One direct hit vaporized a weapons turret, killing the crew inside instantly. "Distance to target 5,000 kilometers, Wong reported. "Not close enough," Jake muttered. He pushed the engines harder. 4,000 kilometers. A plasma beam punched through the Defiance's armor, decompressing 3 decks. Emergency force fields snapped into place, saving the rest of the ship. 3,000 kilometers. Half the human fighters had been destroyed, their pilots dying as their craft exploded around them. But the survivors pressed on, their attacks never stopping. 2,000 kilometers. The Empire ship's massive bulk filled the view screen. Its weapons tracked the Defiance, preparing for the killing blow. "Captain, Reactor 3 is critical," the chief engineer reported. "It'll blow any second." "All hands, brace for impact!" Jake shouted. He aimed the Defiance directly at the Empire ship's command tower and pushed the engines to emergency power. "For Earth!" The Defiance shot forward like a missile. Admiral Korthax watched in disbelief as the tiny human ship accelerated straight toward him, showing no signs of stopping. "They're insane!" Vex exclaimed. "They're going to ram us!" "All weapons, destroy that ship!" Korthax roared. But it was too late. The Defiance smashed into the Empire ship's shields at tremendous speed. The shields, already weakened by the constant bombardment, flickered and failed at the point of impact. The human ship's armored prow punched through, embedding itself in the Empire vessel's hull. "Now!" Jake commanded. Fusion Reactor 3 detonated with the force of a small star. The explosion tore through both ships, vaporizing large sections of hull. The Empire ship's command tower was consumed in nuclear fire. Admiral Korthax had just enough time to realize his mistake before he and his command staff were reduced to atoms. The explosion sent the Defiance spinning away, its hull breached in dozens of places. Jake hung onto his command chair as gravity failed and the lights flickered. More than half his crew was dead, but they had done it. They had hurt the Empire ship. "Damage report," Jake gasped, tasting blood in his mouth. We've lost most of the ship, sir," Wong replied, bleeding from a head wound. "But sensors show the Empire vessel is crippled. Their command structure is gone, and they're venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches." Jake activated what remained of the communications system. With great effort, he connected to the Empire ship's emergency frequency. His face appeared on screens throughout the enemy vessel, broadcast to thousands of alien crew members. Blood ran down Jake's face from a deep cut on his forehead. His uniform was torn and burned, but his eyes blazed with a fury that made even the battle-hardened Empire soldiers step back from their screens. "You attacked our home," Jake said, his voice carrying the weight of billions of dead. "You killed our families, our children. You thought we were weak. You thought we were primitive. But you forgot one thing." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Humans don't forgive. And we never forget. This is just the beginning. Every ship you have, every world you control, every citizen of your empire should know fear. Because we're coming for you. All of you." The transmission ended, leaving the Empire crew in stunned silence. They had conquered 100 worlds, enslaved dozens of species, but never had they seen such rage, such determination, such promise of vengeance in a defeated enemy. On Earth, the survivors emerged from bunkers and shelters to see their ruined world. Cities were gone, replaced by cooling lakes of molten rock. The sky was dark with ash and smoke. Billions were dead, and billions more would die from radiation, starvation, and disease. But in that darkness, a fire was lit. In every surviving human heart, the same fury that drove Jake Morrison burned bright. The Galactic Empire had made an enemy of humanity, and as the survivors began to rebuild, one thought united them all. The Empire would pay. No matter how long it took, no matter the cost, humanity would have its revenge. The galactic community had awakened something terrible in the small blue planet. They had awakened humanity's wrath. In the wreckage of the Defiance, Jake Morrison floated unconscious, but alive. His crew worked desperately to stabilize the ship and save who they could. They had struck the first blow in what would become a war that would reshape the galaxy. The Empire ship limped away, its crew spreading word of what had happened. The humans hadn't surrendered. They hadn't begged for mercy. A single small ship had crippled one of the Empire's finest warships, and the human captain's words echoed in their minds. "We're coming for you, all of you." The war for humanity's survival had begun, and the galaxy would tremble before it was over. 6 months had passed since the attack on Earth. The planet's surface was a patchwork of destruction and desperate reconstruction. In the underground cities that humanity had built with frantic speed, the survivors worked day and night. They had one purpose that drove them forward: vengeance. In the Pacific Bunker Complex, now serving as humanity's military headquarters, General Sarah Chen stood before a holographic display. The room was filled with Earth's remaining military leaders, scientists, and engineers. They had aged years and months, but their eyes burned with determination. "Report," Sarah commanded. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the reverse engineering team, stepped forward. Her lab coat was stained with oil and burn marks from countless experiments. "We've made significant progress on the Empire technology salvaged from the battle. Their shield generators work on a frequency modulation we've never seen before, but we've found a weakness. If we can match the frequency exactly, we can slip weapons through." "How long until we can implement it?" Sarah asked. 3 weeks for the first prototypes, 6 weeks for mass production." Sarah nodded and turned to another figure. Marcus Rodriguez, Earth's finest shipbuilder, looked exhausted but excited. "The shipyards?" Sarah prompted. "We've converted every remaining industrial facility on the planet. The Luna shipyards are producing one destroyer-class vessel every 2 weeks. Mars Colony has retooled their entire infrastructure for fighter production. We'll have a fleet of 200 ships within 4 months. Not enough, Sarah said bluntly. The Empire has thousands. Which is why we're not fighting conventionally, a new voice said. Everyone turned as Captain Jake Morrison entered the room. He moved stiffly, still recovering from his injuries. The scars on his face had healed into pink lines, but his eyes carried the same intensity they had during the battle. Captain Morrison, Sarah acknowledged. I trust you have a proposal? Jake activated a holographic projector, displaying a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Empire worlds and installations. The Empire expects us to build a matching fleet and meet them in honorable combat. They're already reinforcing their border worlds, preparing for a conventional invasion. Jake smiled coldly. We're not going to give them that satisfaction. He highlighted several points on the map. These are Empire supply depots, communication relays, and mining operations. Soft targets with minimal defenses. We hit them hard and fast with small strike teams. We don't occupy, we don't negotiate, we destroy and move on. Guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, Sarah mused. The Empire has grown fat and comfortable. They've forgotten what it means to be hunted. We're going to remind them. The room erupted in discussion. Some argued for caution, others for even more aggressive action. But all agreed on one thing. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the merchant vessel Stellar Dream drifted along standard trading routes. To any scanner, it appeared to be a typical cargo hauler. But inside, 50 of humanity's best soldiers prepared for war. Major Alexandra Alex Petrov checked her equipment one final time. The powered armor was a fusion of human engineering and stolen Empire technology. It could stop most energy weapons and enhance the wearer's strength tenfold. 2 minutes to target, the pilot announced. Alex turned to her team. These men and women had volunteered for what might be a suicide mission. They were the first of humanity's new strike forces, and their success or failure would determine the course of the war. Remember, we go in hard and fast. Primary objective is the communication array. Secondary objective is maximum destruction. Anyone who can't keep up gets left behind. Her soldiers nodded grimly. They had all lost someone in the attack. This was their chance for payback. The Stellar Dream dropped out of hyperspace near a Empire supply station. It was a massive structure, the size of a small moon, floating in the void between star systems. Thousands of Empire personnel lived and worked there, managing the flow of supplies to a dozen nearby worlds. Imperial Station, this is cargo vessel Stellar Dream requesting docking permission. The pilot transmitted in perfect Empire standard language. Stellar Dream, transmit your cargo manifest and identification codes, came the bored reply. The pilot sent false data they had extracted from captured Empire systems. There was a tense moment of silence. Stellar Dream, you are cleared for docking Bay 94. Welcome to Supply Station Xerxes. The human ship glided into the massive docking bay. Around them, Empire workers went about their business, unaware that death had just arrived. The cargo ramp lowered, and Alex's team burst out. The first Empire workers to see them barely had time to scream before pulse rifles cut them down. The humans moved like a well-oiled machine, splitting into smaller groups as they had practiced hundreds of times. Alex led her squad toward the communication center. They encountered a security checkpoint where 4 Empire guards fumbled for their weapons. Alex didn't give them the chance. Her armor-enhanced strength allowed her to crush one guard's skull with her bare hands, while her rifle took down 2 more. The 4th died with a combat knife in his throat. Stevens, Davis, set the charges, Alex ordered. Everyone else, defensive positions. Alarms wailed throughout the station as the Empire forces realized they were under attack. But the humans had planned for this. Other teams had already destroyed key defensive positions and sabotaged internal communications. The Empire's response was chaotic and uncoordinated. In the station's command center, Commander Thrax couldn't believe what he was seeing. Humans? Here? It was impossible. Earth was a burning ruin half a galaxy away. How could they mount an attack? "Seal all sections," he ordered. "Deploy security teams to all critical areas." "Commander, we've lost contact with sections 12 through 18, an officer reported. "Internal sensors show multiple explosions." "And communication array is offline," another added. "We can't call for reinforcements." Thrax felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of service: fear. These humans weren't fighting like any enemy he had faced. They weren't trying to capture the station or negotiate. They were simply destroying everything they could reach. Back at the communications center, Alex's team had finished planting their explosives. They had fought off 3 waves of Empire security, leaving the corridors carpeted with alien bodies. But time was running out. "All teams, this is Petrov. Primary objective complete. Evacuate to the ship. You have 5 minutes before the fireworks start." The humans began their fighting retreat. They had lost 8 soldiers, but the mission was succeeding beyond their wildest hopes. The Empire forces were in complete disarray, unable to mount an effective defense against the unexpected assault. As the Stellar Dream blasted out of the docking bay, Alex watched through a viewport. The station seemed peaceful for a moment. Then the explosions began. The communication array went first, followed by the power generators. Chain reactions spread throughout the structure as safety systems failed and fuel stores ignited. Supply Station Xerxes died in nuclear fire, taking 10,000 Empire personnel with it. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, a new star burning briefly in the void. Similar scenes played out across Empire space. Human strike teams hit a dozen targets simultaneously. Some missions succeeded, others failed with all hands lost. But the message was clear: humanity was not defeated. On the Empire throne world of Corvallis, Supreme Emperor Maximus the Eternal received report after report of attacks. His massive form, standing 3 meters tall and covered in ceremonial armor, trembled with rage. "How?" he demanded of his war council. "How are these primitives striking at us? We destroyed their world." "They appear to have been more advanced than our intelligence suggested," War Master Drone admitted. "And they're not fighting by conventional rules of war." "Then we will not either," Maximus declared. "I want every human hunted down. Every world that gives them shelter burned. Increase the fleet presence at all installations, and find their hidden bases." But finding humanity's bases proved impossible. Earth's survivors had learned the lesson of keeping all eggs in one basket. They had spread across dozens of hidden locations: asteroid bases, stations hidden in nebulae, underground cities on barren worlds the Empire had deemed worthless. In one such base, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, Captain Morrison met with an unusual gathering. Representatives from species the Empire had conquered sat around a table, their faces, or what passed for faces, showing a mixture of hope and fear. "The Vex Collective offers our manufacturing capabilities," a insectoid being clicked. 20 million drones ready to work on your ship construction." "The Altarian free tribes can provide rare minerals," another added, its crystalline form shimmering. "Materials the Empire has banned us from mining." Jake leaned forward. "And what do you want in return?" The answer came in unison from a dozen different vocal organs: freedom. "The Empire has held our worlds for centuries," the Vex representative continued. "We had given up hope, but you humans, you showed it could be done. One small ship crippled their finest warship. Your strikes teams have done more damage in months than we managed in decades of resistance." "You want us to win your freedom for you?" Jake asked. "No," the crystalline being said. We want to win it alongside you. The Empire made a mistake when they attacked Earth. They didn't just make an enemy of humanity. They reminded every conquered species what it means to fight back. Jake stood and looked at each representative. Here were beings from across the galaxy, united by oppression and now by hope. The Empire had ruled through fear for millennia, but fear was a poor foundation when faced with those who had nothing left to lose. Then we fight together, Jake declared, not as humans or Vex or Altarians, but as free beings against tyranny. The alliance that formed that day would change everything. Suddenly, humanity's small fleet was supplemented by thousands of volunteers from dozens of species. Hidden factories on conquered worlds began producing weapons. Resistance cells that had been dormant for generations awakened. The Empire found itself fighting not one species, but an uprising across its entire domain, and at the spearhead of every assault, in the most dangerous missions, human soldiers led the way. They had become a symbol, a rallying cry for the oppressed. On Earth, in the ruins of what had once been New York, a child found a piece of metal in the rubble. It was part of the Statue of Liberty's crown, melted and twisted, but still recognizable. She brought it to her mother, who was working on rebuilding their shelter. "What was it, Mama?" the girl asked. The mother took the metal piece, tears in her eyes. "It was a symbol, baby, of freedom, of hope." "Did the bad aliens destroy it?" "They destroyed the statue," her mother said, hugging her close. "But they can't destroy what it stood for. And we're going to make them pay for trying." Across the planet, in bunkers and rebuilt cities, children grew up with stories of the attack. But more importantly, they grew up with stories of the defiance, of Captain Morrison's message, of the strikes against the Empire. They grew up knowing that humanity would not be victims. In space, the war escalated. The Empire's massive fleets found themselves chasing shadows. Human ships would appear, strike, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Supply lines were disrupted. Communication networks fell silent. Worlds that had been secure for centuries suddenly faced uprisings. And through it all, Jake Morrison's words echoed across the galaxy, translated into 100 languages, whispered in slave quarters, and shouted in rebel bases, "We're coming for you, all of you." The Empire had awakened humanity's wrath. Now they would learn what that truly meant. The storm was rising, and it would not be stopped until justice was served for the billions who had died on Earth. In the throne room of Corvallis, Emperor Maximus studied the reports with growing concern. Red marks showed systems in rebellion, destroyed installations, and lost fleets. The map that had once shown the Empire's total dominion now looked like it had a spreading disease. "Your Majesty," War Master Drone said carefully, "perhaps we should consider negotiating." "Never!" Maximus roared. "We are the Galactic Empire. We do not negotiate with insects." But even as he spoke, both of them knew the truth. The insects were winning. And unless something changed dramatically, the empire that had stood for 10,000 years might fall to a species they had dismissed as primitive. The humans were coming, and hell was coming with them. 5 years had passed since the Day of Burning as Earth's attack had come to be known. The galaxy had transformed from a place of empire dominion to a battlefield where freedom fought tyranny at every turn. The war had spread like wildfire, consuming entire sectors in its wake. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, the Vengeance. It was a ship that shouldn't exist, built with stolen Empire technology, improved with human innovation, and armed with weapons that violated several galactic treaties humanity had never signed. Around her, a fleet of 5,000 ships held formation. It was a patchwork armada. Sleek human destroyers flew alongside bulky Vex carrier hives. Crystalline Altarian sword ships glimmered next to the organic vessels of the Penthari. Every free species in the galaxy had contributed to this force. "Admiral, all ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. "Operation Reckoning is go on your command." Elena looked at the holographic display showing their target. Corvallis, the Empire's throne world. For 10,000 years it had stood untouchable, protected by the largest fleet in galactic history and planetary shields that could withstand the power of a supernova. But humanity had learned much in 5 years of war. They had learned that every shield had a frequency, every fleet had a weakness, and every empire had a breaking point. "Send the signal," Elena commanded. "Begin the operation." Across the galaxy, coordinated strikes began. This wasn't like the desperate raids of the early war. This was precision warfare on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Human cyber warfare specialists, working with collective hive minds, launched viruses into the Empire's communication networks. Decades of stolen codes and infiltrated systems activated at once. On 1,000 Empire worlds, defense systems suddenly went offline. Military bases found their weapons turning on their own ships. The carefully maintained order of the Empire dissolved into chaos. But the real blow came from within Corvallis itself. For 3 years, human agents had been infiltrating the throne world. They came as slaves, traitors, even bureaucrats. They had suffered indignities and torture, watching and waiting for this moment. Now, as the Empire's attention turned to the approaching fleet, they struck. Maria Santos had spent 2 years as a cleaning slave in the Imperial Palace. The Empire's arrogance meant they never suspected a human could hide among them for so long. They had broken her body with labor and whips, but never her spirit. Now she placed the last of her thermite charges in the palace's shield generator room. "For Earth," she whispered, activating the timer. Similar scenes played out across the planet. Power grids exploded. Communication hubs went dark. The mighty planetary shields flickered and failed in sections as their generators were destroyed from within. In space, Elena watched as gaps appeared in Corvallis's defenses. "All ships, advance. Priority targets are military installations and government centers. Remember, we're not here to conquer. We're here to end this." The United Fleet surged forward. The Empire's defenders, already struggling with sabotage and communication failures, met them in desperate battle. Plasma beams and missiles filled the void between the fleets. Ships died by the hundreds, their crews sacrificing themselves for victory. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding a squadron of stealth bombers, led his group through the chaos. His hair had gone gray in the years of war, and his body bore more scars than he could count. But his determination had never wavered. "Target locked on the Imperial Military Command," his weapons officer reported. "All bombers, follow my lead," Jake ordered. "Let's finish what we started." The stealth bombers dove toward the planet's surface, their cloaking technology, a gift from the shadow-dwelling Nokari, hiding them from most sensors. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky as they descended, but the bombers pressed on. 3 were hit, spiraling down in flames, but the rest reached their target. The Imperial Military Command was a fortress city, home to the Empire's war machine. From here, orders had gone out to burn 1,000 worlds. Now it would burn in turn. "Bombs away," Jake announced calmly. Antimatter weapons, humanity's terrible gift to galactic warfare, fell like rain. The fortress city vanished in a series of explosions that could be seen from orbit. With it died the Empire's ability to coordinate its remaining forces. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Maximus watched his empire crumble. Reports flooded in of worlds declaring independence, fleets defecting to the rebels, and entire sectors falling silent. His own throne room shook as explosions rocked the city. "Your Majesty, we must evacuate," War Master Drone urged. "No," Maximus said quietly. For the first time in his long life, the immortal emperor looked tired. "There is nowhere to run. They are everywhere." As if to emphasize his words, The throne room's massive doors exploded inward. Through the smoke came human soldiers in powered armor, weapons raised. Behind them, fighters from a dozen species followed. At their head walked General Sarah Chen. She had come from Earth for this moment to see the end of those who had ordered her world's destruction. Her armor was scarred from 100 battles, but she moved with the confidence of inevitable victory. "Emperor Maximus," she said, her voice amplified by the armor's speakers. "By the authority of the United Free Worlds, you are under arrest for genocide, slavery, and crimes against sentience." "You dare?" Maximus rose from his throne, his own ceremonial armor crackling with energy. "I am the Eternal Emperor. I have ruled for 3,000 years. You are nothing but upstart apes who should have stayed in your trees." Sarah removed her helmet, showing a face marked by loss and hardened by war. "We were happy in our trees, until you burned them down. You made one mistake, Emperor. You left some of us alive." The Emperor raised his energy staff, preparing to fight. But before he could move, a shot rang out. He looked down in surprise at the smoking hole in his chest, then turned to see War Master Drone holding a human pistol. "Even I know when a war is lost," Drone said simply. "I surrender on behalf of the Empire's military forces." Maximus fell to his knees, his immortal life ending at last. "Impossible," he gasped. "The Empire, eternal." "Nothing is eternal," Sarah replied, "especially not tyranny." As the Emperor died, his last sight was human soldiers tearing down the banners of his empire. The dynasty that had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia ended not with a grand battle, but with a single bullet and the weight of its own cruelty. Across Corvallis, the fighting continued for days. Die-hard Empire forces fought to the last, while others surrendered en masse. The United Fleet established orbital superiority, cutting off any escape for the Empire's leadership. In the ruins of the Imperial Senate, trials began almost immediately. The liberated species demanded justice for centuries of oppression. Humans, despite their losses, insisted on proper legal proceedings. They would not become the monsters they had fought. Jake Morrison sat in the makeshift courtroom, watching as Empire officials were brought before tribunals. Some showed remorse, others defiance. All faced the weight of their crimes. "Captain Morrison," a voice said. He turned to see a vexed Drone approaching. "I wanted to thank you. Your people's sacrifice gave us hope when we had none." "We all sacrificed," Jake replied. "We all bled for this freedom." "Yes, but humans bled first and most." It was true. The casualty figures were staggering. Earth's population had been reduced by 90%. Entire human colonies had been wiped out in retaliation strikes. But they had never stopped fighting, never considered surrender. Elena Vasquez found herself in the Emperor's former Situation Room, now serving as the temporary headquarters for the United Free Worlds. Representatives from every liberated species worked together, trying to build something new from the Empire's ashes. "We need to establish trade routes," one said. "And a defense force to prevent any Empire remnants from regrouping," another added. "What about Earth?" a Penthari asked. "The humans have paid the highest price. Their world is still in ruins." Elena spoke up. "Earth will be rebuilt, but not just by humans. We all stand free because we stood together. Earth will be restored by all of us, as a symbol of what unity can achieve." The agreement was unanimous. Resources poured in from across the galaxy. Species who had been enemies under the Empire worked side by side to heal the wounded world. It would take generations, but Earth would live again. Maria Santos, the cleaning slave who had helped bring down Corvallis's shields, stood in what had been the Imperial Garden. The exotic plants from 1,000 worlds were already wilting without their carefully maintained environment. Soon, this place of beauty built on suffering would be gone. She thought of her family, killed in the first attack on Earth. They would never see this victory, but their sacrifice, like that of billions of others. had not been in vain. A young human soldier found her there. "Ma'am, the transport to Earth leaves in an hour." "Earth?" Maria repeated softly. "I never thought I'd see home again." "None of us did," the soldier admitted. "But we're going back. We're going to rebuild, and we're going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." As ships began ferrying survivors back to Earth, the galaxy adjusted to its new reality. The Empire was gone, replaced by a confederation of free worlds. It wasn't perfect. Millennia of division couldn't be healed overnight. But it was a beginning. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of a transport ship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. The planet was scarred, its once blue surface marked with brown and gray. But there was still blue, still green. Life endured. "Captain," Elena Vasquez joined him, "what will you do now? The war is over." "Is it?" Jake asked. "There are still Empire holdouts, pirates taking advantage of the chaos, worlds that need help rebuilding." "You could retire. You've earned it." Jake smiled, the expression strange on his war-worn face. "Maybe someday. But not yet. We've torn down an empire. Now we need to build something better in its place." Elena nodded. They both knew the hardest part was just beginning. War was simple compared to peace. But if humanity could destroy the greatest empire in galactic history, they could help build a better future. On Earth, in a medical tent in what had once been London, a child was born. The first human born on Earth since the Reconstruction began. Her cry echoed across the ruins, a sound of defiance and hope. The nurse who delivered her was Altarian. The doctor monitoring her vitals was Vex. They had come to help rebuild the world that had saved them all. The child's mother, a survivor of the attacks, wept with joy. "What will you name her?" the nurse asked. The mother looked through the tent's clear walls at the construction crews working to rebuild the city. Humans and aliens labored together, clearing rubble and laying foundations for the future. "Hope," she said. "I'll name her Hope." Word of Hope's birth spread across the planet, then across the galaxy. She became a symbol of renewal, of life continuing despite everything. Messages of congratulation came from 100 worlds. Former enemies sent gifts and blessings. In the years that followed, Earth slowly healed. Cities rose from the ashes, incorporating architecture and technology from across the galaxy. The scars remained. Massive craters turned into memorial lakes, glass plains where deserts had been turned to silicon. But life returned. The story of humanity's war became legend. How a single species, attacked without provocation, had risen up and brought down an empire. How they had united the galaxy's oppressed and won freedom for all. How they had faced extinction and refused to yield. Children across the galaxy learned the words that had started the rebellion. "You attacked our home." 5 simple words that had changed everything. 5 words that reminded every tyrant, every conqueror, every would-be emperor of a simple truth. There are some species you do not provoke. There are some homes you do not attack. And there are some enemies who will never stop coming for you. Humanity had been tested in the crucible of war and emerged harder than any could have imagined. They had lost billions but saved trillions. They had been pushed to the brink of extinction and responded by liberating a galaxy. On the 5th anniversary of the war's end, a monument was unveiled on Earth. It stood where New York had once been, a towering spire reaching toward the stars. At its base, the names of the dead were inscribed, not just humans, but every being who had died fighting for freedom. Jake Morrison, now an old man, spoke at the dedication. His voice was rougher than it had been when he shouted defiance at the Empire, but it carried the same strength. "We stand here not as conquerors, but as survivors, not as humans, but as free beings. We remember the dead by living as they would have wanted, in peace, in freedom, in unity." He paused, looking at the crowd. Humans stood beside Vex, Altarians next to Penthari. Former enemies, now friends, united by shared sacrifice. The Empire thought they were attacking just another primitive world. They were wrong. They attacked our home. And in doing so, they awakened something they couldn't understand, the will to be free. Today, we honor those who paid the price for that freedom. Tomorrow, we build the galaxy they died for. As the sun set over the rebuilt Earth, casting long shadows from the monument, the gathered crowds stood in silence. They remembered the dead, celebrated the living, and looked toward a future written not by emperors and tyrants, but by free beings choosing their own destiny. The Galactic Empire was gone. In its place stood something messier, more chaotic, but infinitely more precious, freedom. And at the heart of it all was a small blue planet that had refused to die, and a species that had reminded the galaxy what it meant to fight for home. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. But if humanity could bring down an empire, they could build something better in its place. They had attacked Earth. They had learned why that was a mistake, and the galaxy would never be the same.